Hello everybody, my name is Scott Ranf. I'm here interviewing Gary Gillet. Gary Gillet has been the city band director for the Missoula City Band for decades now, for a long time, and he's going to give a retrospect history of the Missoula City Band from, what, more than 100 years ago and everything like that? More than 100 years ago.
More than 100 years ago.
So yeah, we're going to have a really cool retrospect about the Missoula City Band and just kind of learning more about it currently, the past, and potentially the future.
Oh, the future. Well, there is tomorrow.
Yes, so
right,
let's kick things off.
Okay.
What was the basically the flashpoint on starting the city band in the city of Missoula all those 100 years ago?
1865 is the date that I chose. So I wrote the history. It's still available. The stories in time. It's the history of the city band. When I retired from teaching, I had time to do it, and I've been researching moments in the past from the city band for decades of years, as I was looking for hints about programming. I think what did it for me, because I wasn't a history buff much at all. I mean, the history of Detroit, it's like, oh, geez. Once I moved out west, and especially when I moved to Stevensville, and all of a sudden I found myself sitting in the middle of this momentous Montana history. That Lucille Evans, who she's gone now, but she's written, I think she wrote 3 books about the history in Stevensville of the first white settlement that produced, they call themselves the first city in Montana, whatever it is. There's a significant history in Stevensville, and I lived right there in town. And so everyone had to go down the mission and read the story. And then Lucille lived just 2 blocks from me, so I met the author, and I think that's what did it. That kind of went, my gosh. And then Fort Owen is just a half a mile out in a field, and I found myself in day-to-day touch with history. And I think it did it with me when I moved up to Missoula, and I started conducting the city band, and then I was wondering, well, I wonder what they did 100 years ago, because they've been around that long. And I started messing around here in the library, going through the microfiche, and becoming aware of the fact that the Missoula's history is young, and it's still right here in our midst. I mean, you just walk down the street, and it's almost like it's current. And I found myself wondering what they played 100 years ago, and I could actually find some of those tunes, and we could recreate that. When I finally retired from teaching, that I continued to do that research, and finally realized I had this huge volume of materials that already. It wasn't quite cataloged, I'd say. No, it wasn't well cataloged, so I had to do a lot of organizing. But I found myself more and more interested in it. And then traced it back to 1865. It hadn't always been called the Missoula City Band. They finally decided on that name about turn of this previous century, 1900s. And the first group was just, it's been all kinds of iterations, except that we always called it a band. And I think up front it was called the Garden City Band. But that's, they had their first little rehearsals and gigs out at close to Frenchtown, back at the original spot of Missoula, Garden City Band, or there's been a number, the Hornblowers Association, the Silver Cornet Band, when somebody bought a silver-plated cornet. They had a number of names for it, but there's always a string of the same people that wound their way as the few horn players in town with an occasional drummer.
Wow.
But we've been around a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the city band too, so I have some inside knowledge of it.
You've absolved yourself now from being pointed out. Good going, buddy.
Right.
It's almost all just community folks that had learned how to play or wanted to learn how to play, and then they we have an organization for them to draw them in, and then the whole idea about it is to entertain the community.
Yeah, what would you say is the spirit of the Missoula City Band? What does that mean to you?
Giving folks a chance to make music, trying to help them be better music players. There's still plenty of teaching that goes on, instructing and or coaching, whatever the words we use on it, in order to be able, even if they're fine players, and there's some of those too, but even if they're fine players, trying to take what we have and then how we form that into an ensemble that sounds better? How do we listen to each other? How do we combine to make a band? Because you just can't take 4 or 5 horn blowers and throw them in a room and hope to God. No, it takes some type of organization, and that's the role of the leader. And so a place for people to make music, and then a venue, somewhere to be able to share music with folks. And for years, the band would just go out and hang it on street corners, or go to the courthouse. That was a very usual venue for all community bands all over the world. And we had a band shell that got torn down. It was displaced by the addition to the courthouse, the annex, I think is what it's called. Yeah. And there was a band shell right over there. And the stories about, the band would outgrow the band shell, and they would go out and lay a couple boards and a couple sawhorses in order to be able to put the drum section on when they outgrew that. The standing cute little gazebo on the courthouse lawn now wasn't built until after the band had already moved out to Bonner Park.
And speaking of courthouse, there's also that picture of the band. Is that the picture from in front of the courthouse?
No, it was a posed picture. I think by that time the band was playing in the parks. And for a while they played at Greeno Park. There was Butte still does this, and they move around to city parks around the community, so that way the music is being brought to the folks. It's a lovely idea. The problem is that there's no acoustical considerations, and you take anything and just stick it outside under the beautiful open sky, but the sound just dissipates so quickly that it's hard to hear. So having some type of venue with some acoustical properties in order to be able to carry the sound out, especially before we had the availability of public address systems and things like that. Yeah. Greeno Park was a usual spot, but then moved it around, and finally they built a wooden structure out at Bonner Park.
Yeah.
And the land was available, and they built it, and then it would just deteriorate as wood does, and the band grew just because Missoula grew. So there were more people playing, and then it became a liability. And that's when the Orchard Homes Women's Club, that's who they were. For whatever reason, they took the project on to make a good band shell. And then they built it for under cost, saved some money for a nest egg for the band, and then sold it to the city for $1.
Wow.
And then grandfathered or grandmothered us into first rights.
Yeah. So one of the privileges of my job is I occasionally get to proclaim things. Earlier this morning I proclaimed that it wouldn't rain, and we got lucky tonight, so that worked out pretty well. But this is a much more accurate proclamation. That is, whereas, ladies and gentlemen, Alfredo Chipolato has for many years entertained the music-loving population of Missoula with his dulcet tenor tones and ready wit, and whereas Alfredo has contributed enormously to Montanans' appreciation of the Italian repertoire, and whereas on the 5th of October, mark your calendars, 2006, Alfredo celebrates his 94th birthday.
Missoula.
Yeah, and I know that the city band has always had like a private-public partnership with the city of Missoula as a whole.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that relationship as it progressed over the more than 100 years.
Yeah, that of course up front there were no civic funds available, and so it was all private donations. People had to pay to be in the band in order to be able to. Most often, you pay your leader a little bit.
Yeah, they
As
call
we
them,
well should do.
and they call them the dues, right? Every
Yeah.
club, every group, Elks Union, everything in Missoula at the time had some version of dues that people paid into because everyone like took value into their participation.
Easy for you to say. Yes, and then to pay for the administration of on whatever level people decide going to happen. You know, if somebody's you've got expenses for space, either rehearsal or performance spaces, administration. Someone's got to take care of the library and that stuff, and then leadership. Someone needs to stand in front and take responsibility for that crap.
Yeah, because even today, people are struggling to find practice spaces where they can be loud enough to get better at their instruments.
Yeah, and that's just recently since COVID. That before COVID, several years before I retired. I'd always rehearsed at Sentinel or at Big Sky when I was teaching there, and there was a collaborative community school deal, and over time they started to ask for custodial fees somehow to share the costs, and okay, we'll pay a little bit, but for the most part it was very congenial, and since I had both roles as school teacher and also band director for the city, that it worked out fine. During COVID, everything went wacky as all get out, and we ended up wanting to continue to play, and we found ourselves outside. And since we're going to rehearse and play outside, we found that the band shell had much better rehearsal acoustics.
Okay. Thank you, Jake. We're going to kill everything on our microphone. I've been working on the kid that does all of our copy, all of our music printing. Whenever I go in the Missoula coffee shop, the kid is always whistling. If you've ever been in there, man, Doug can whistle. I've been after him, but he knew he couldn't pull it off because he'd start smiling. And you smile with a whistle and you're shot. Amber came up to me after rehearsal on Monday and said, "Hey, I can whistle that sucker." And when the modulation came, it almost got outside your tessitura, kid, but you made it happen. Nice whistling, kid. And the whole time I'm harassing her, seeing if I can make her laugh and smile to you so it would blow it.
And especially during COVID times when we had to sit 5 feet apart, and we had to limit the size of the band. And since we rehearsed that way and then performed that way, when the COVID finally lifted, it was like, should we go? Hold on, let's just stay outside, and we just sit closer together, which makes it easier to hear each other. And the band shell's not bad acoustically. And we use a public address system to help enhance the band just a little bit, to get a little bit louder, and also for soloists and especially vocalists.
And then essentially play for an hour on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then whether people rehearse at home, that's on them.
That's right.
So it's all volunteer based.
It's all volunteer based. They get a few bucks if the band members show up 80% of the time.
Yep.
All right. So we have a cutoff. So there were private funds. I lost my track there, didn't I? I just went somewhere else. Funding. There was many cities around the country. Would tax their citizens to have a municipal band.
Wow.
And
it was popular back then.
it was
to do it.
It was before radio, before TV. It was entertainment, and and municipalities wanted to have that. It was a sign of status for your town if you had yourself a band. And then it was, well, if you want a band, well, it's going to cost you a little bit. So they passed. And there's even a great Carl King wrote the Iowa Band Law March. And I play it about every 5 or 6 years just to tell the story that this is in celebration of all these cities that would pass their own. There was never a national band law. Dang it. But Missoula, it was on the books. We were funded, and funded pretty well. Back when the band was also a union band, American Federation of Musicians, that there was a partnership between the city and the union, and musicians, they couldn't make a living at it, but it was more than beer money in order to be able to have a band be together. Over the years, almost all cities have abolished the band law, as well as Missoula. I've tracked it all, and I'm trying to think of how long ago we lost the law. And then, where would funding the city band go? Sometimes it would go under a separate line item. For years, I had to go to the city council and plead my case. I would just call it begging, but some years I would use humor. And for years, we had a treasurer of the city band. He's a retired lieutenant colonel, and he had the idea that if you just ask for less money every year, the city council won't say no. And George Goodrich, our old-time trumpet player, went, "Oh, I'll try that," because sometimes George would was the lead attorney on a lawsuit against the city. And then he'd turn back around, sit down, get back up and go, "Hey, but now I'm here wearing a different hat. How about you continue to pay?" So we let the Lieutenant Colonel Julian LePage, and he went. And that's when he really stepped up to, hey, just ask for less money. Well, of course, that's probably successful, but that's a short-sighted. If you keep asking for less, sooner or later there'll be nothing left to ask. So he's gone.
Yeah.
So there was some quite lean years in there as we made that transition. Now we're tucked into community relations through Parks and Rec, and it's been a small donation to the city, $5,880.
Yeah.
I can't buy a car for that, but that's how much the city contributes to the Missoula City Band.
Well, all our concerts are special to us, but tonight we remember our departed friend, George Goodrich. He played trumpet, was a city band announcer for many, many years. His impact on this organization is huge. He was instrumental in forming the Barner Park Band Shell Committee to build this band shell that you see here. He chose Gary to be our conductor and yours truly to be the announcer.
He had some qualities that we made.
And what better way to remember George than to do it with the band he loved, playing the type of music that was so much a part of his life.
Having a city band like this basically allows people who have, dust collecting on their old instrument to break it out,
Yep.
join a collective, and get a group going, and just get a band together.
Yep.
That's kind of like the saying is, let's get a band together.
Get a band together, and we have one, man.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, since we're going a little bit more in the history, I want to talk about the directors. First and foremost, I want to know that how did you get the position from your, forebearers?
Yeah, so I was teaching down in Bitterroot, and all of a sudden this old geezer showed up, asked if he could play cornet and in the band. I went, well, sure. I met him and told me his name. I got him. Come to find out, it was George Goodrich, who was the announcer for the Missoula City Band, and I ended up having one of his sons student teach with me. Once I moved into Missoula, but George was scouting. George was the in charge of the Missoula City Band, as Alex Stepanzov, who preceded me, who was a Russian immigrant who didn't have great English skills, so he managed, and he wasn't much of a musician, but he sure loved it. And Alex was aging and getting close to the end of his abilities to be able to lead the band. And George was scouting me out when I was conducting the Bitterroot Community Band. That's where he showed up to play in the band. And he was scouting me out. I don't know where he heard from me from, I don't know. But that was it. And George just ran the band. There was no board, there was no nothing. It was just George. And when I moved to town, and maybe a year after I moved to town, I was teaching out Big Sky that the old fella, I think his wife died first, I think is what it was. Anyway, he moved to California.
Right.
That his daughter wanted to care for him, which is a scary thing.
So how long did you say George was in the position of director of the city band for?
Oh, so he never directed. He just administered.
Right.
He took care of stuff, and George did that for probably 30 or 40 years. He came over from Helena early in his career and played in the band until he passed away.
Wow.
So he appointed. He called. We met.
He made the call.
He made the call. And I went, oh, and then we had a meeting with the union and a few folks, and I just wanted to sever the tie between the American Federation of Musicians and the city band because it was no longer viable, in my opinion, and some folks weren't happy about that, and I had to weather that. It was a minor issue, and.
Because the 90s was a very interesting time just in Missoula as a whole.
Yeah.
Just because a lot of businesses, a lot of things kind of moved from downtown. Everything was expanding further away from the downtown heart of Missoula.
Yeah.
And, that also brought a rise to more nonprofits
Yep.
to start in Missoula. And nonprofits and boards and all that kind of stuff started to become more of the norm, which is what the Missoula City Band currently has as a board.
Yeah, and to have our performance site within the city limits yet, but out of the downtown area. That's a hard place to be able to maintain a concert space is downtown. Caris Park, it's a constant concern about how to maintain this, how to manage this. Out there in the city park, it's not a concern, and whether or not that's what the folks were thinking 50 years ago. But so I took over just at that time when the new band show was finishing up, and it was a new start for the band. And I had been doing community bands, in the Bitterroot for 6 or 7 years, and before that I'd had a Bitterroot. I'd had a community band on the little reservation I taught at in Nevada, and I played in community bands when I was in college and high school back in Detroit.
Wow.
So I have a long passion that we need to offer community people a chance to be able to play their horns after we teach them for 5th grade through 12th grade, 7 years. After we do that there's some people that want to continue to play at some level. Thank God.
Yeah, of course.
Right? So they need to have a place to be able to do that. And then community bands is something that many of us school band directors took up to give former students a place to be able to play it.
you're the current last director of the Missoula City Band.
beginning.
Let's talk about the first. The very beginning, the humble beginnings of the first one.
Let me here. I do have that even written down. I think it was Barney Court. I think it's what his first name was. In the book, if you'd love to have one, pick it up anywhere. It was John Barleycorn. When I first, there was the Barleycorn and Barleycorn, and I was confused, and I had help in researching Susan Hintz, who's a member of the band, and is a fine researcher, and I was reading about Fort Fizzle. Hey, that fire today was up by Fort Fizzle, I realized. Anyway, I was reading about that Fort Fizzle, and there was a mention of barleycorn, that the natives just decided to take the high road, and the pretend army militia just sat there, woke up, and the natives have all gone. What around them? And there was a suspect that maybe Mr. Barleycorn might have been a reason for it.
Yeah.
And I thought that barleycorn existed. No, barleycorn is another name for homemade hooch.
Yeah.
And that there was accusations about
Wasn't this around the same?
Kids were drinking.
So these was when the Navajo was coming up to Montana at that time?
This is when the Nez Perce were coming through. Came over Lolo Pass, and they were just trying to run away.
Yeah.
And
most of the Missoulians at the time were just like, oh, they're coming here. Oh, no. Oh, no. Because just so you guys know, for a history lesson, a year ago before that moment, Battle of Little Bighorn.
Yeah.
Custer's Last Stand.
Yeah.
A lot of people were like, okay.
Oh, no.
This
They're
is
coming
real.
for us. No, they just were trying. They had some young bucks that had screwed up, killed a couple of settlers, and all they wanted to do was just get away, and they knew that Canada would, or they were hoping Canada would take them in. And they just took this route, and they came over Lolo Pass, and they got to that right there, and that's where Fort Fizzle, because you really didn't have a service. There were a couple of servicemen at Fort Missoula, but that's why it was stationed. Mostly town folks. Some bitterers came up, and everyone just went. I think they had themselves a little nip. The locals went to sleep. The natives went around and went down the Bitterroot, and they eventually did a big hole, and they made it like within 10 miles of the Canadian border. Anyway, I always got those names misinterpreted, and the researcher was the one that she turned me on what barleycorn was, and she's not a non-drinker altogether. I'm a social drinker, and she was just flabbergasted. I didn't know what barleycorn was. Corn whiskey is what I got,
okay.
or something like that.
Right.
Anyway, John Barleycorn was the first fellow. 1865, he started a boys' brass band. Then, there were, let's see, 2, 4, 6, there have been 20 folks, some more, that would just do a year or two, some that went on to the university. They came here, 1 or 2 that were affiliated with the 25th Infantry Band out at Fort Missoula, that they did both the town band and the military band, or went from one to the other.
And this is the one that was kind of like recreated as the Heritage Band, right?
Yes, and that's what I do with the several years ago, that when we celebrated the 25th Infantry bicycle trek to St. Louis.
Yep.
With the Buffalo Soldiers, we recreated that band, found music that was written at that time. That fellow's name was Safranik, and he went on to a long and huge career in bands. 10 years before this band director got hooked up with Custer, this band director had a little city band in Yankton, South Dakota. He was an Italian immigrant. God knows how he ended up in Yankton, South Dakota, but he did. And he wrote this 10 years before the Little Bighorn. This is Mazurka, which is a Polish slow waltz. And I think I'm going to do another one of his next year, do an all Safranik concert. He was legit. Many of the guys were, there were some homegrown ones. There was a family that had father and son, and that's the Missoula Police Chief, Lawrence. I can't remember his first name. Pete Lawrenson. There it is. I think Pete lives down in Darby now, but he was our police chief here during our time. And 2 of his kin, I think it was his great-grandfather and great-great-grandfather were both band directors of the Missoula City Band. We had one fellow that it seems as if maybe he fell in love with the sheriff's wife. Maybe they had a fling. Well, it's all covered and still an open wound. This guy shot. The fellow killed himself downtown.
Wow.
He wasn't in custody yet, but he couldn't live with it. Killed himself. He had come up from Deer Lodge and it was down there directing bands at the same time that supposedly Jesse James and company were hanging out down there. So maybe he had some criminal connections. Newspaper fellas, most of them, oh yeah, there was all kinds of, at that time, immigrants that were musically trained in Europe and then spread out. Many of them did service time first, and then after the Civil War was done, they'd fan out and conduct municipal bands before we had established colleges to train musicians in. Let's see if there was another, oh, we had one hack that had a shtick and he really wanted to be famous, and he played double cornet, and it was the lead pipe was split, so he played in mouthpiece one, then had a horn on each side, and he played duets. He was going for the big time, and he went to he went to L.A. and just got killed in the press. That it was the locals were pretty impressed by him. And when he went to a national stage, it was like, oh my gosh, he disappeared from our history.
So yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot happened. Like, what are the other significant events happened basically from 1865 up into the turn of the century?
So we didn't start until, the West really wasn't settled by white folk until after the Civil War, and that's when. And many Southern came to Montana. Many former Confederates came. So there was this, at the very beginning of it, like the same thing happened in Helena, is that it was mostly Southern folks. And so there was a whole lot of Dixie going on, man. That was happening. And then we turned into communities, and part of that community blending is that people would move into town, and then we find out we had horn players. We need to find somebody that could blow their way out of a paper bag, is what we call it. And then they'd need to find somebody, usually a civic group in town, that would buy a batch of horns. And that's what would happen. Somebody would finally pony up, buy a batch of horns, they get sent out the train, and then the horns were distributed. And if you didn't have, oftentimes there wasn't good leadership or knowledgeable leadership to teach people how to play. And you just can't give people horns and think it's going to work.
And not to mention, even some of the music was like very much like chicken scratch. You could barely read a lot of that old school.
And many of the folks that would do early bands would write their own arrangements because you had to buy music. Mm-hmm. And we're a long way from nowhere, man. So people, these band guys would write out the music by hand and then have to teach these folks how to play horns. And that's where the chain really broke. Everyone's familiar with the Music Man. And
yes.
That wasn't uncommon. That movie came around because that's what would happen. A shyster would come into town, make a bunch of money selling horns, but he had no idea how to teach them.
Yeah.
That's got a happy ending. Most of them didn't happen that way.
Yeah.
Early, especially in Missoula as well, that somebody would buy some horns, they get together. This poor sucker, he couldn't teach him how to play, and it would suck. We had to find newspaper reports of, God, I sure hope it gets better, or they're going to subject us to that. And then they'd play, and then they'd reorganizing the band was what was called. They'd fire the director, and then everything would just go vacant for a while until somebody moved to town, wanted to have a band to play, and it would all start up over again.
Yeah. Can you imagine just like the idea of it's always like a young man's game to be like, I want to start a band, look at me, I want to do this kind of stuff. And then a lot of times they fizzle out.
Yeah.
They come and go all the time.
Yep, over and over again.
But what would you say was a part of keeping Missoula City Band kind of like active and just keep it going?
We were fortunate enough to be in a college town, but so that influence that there was usually a musician or two on campus, and oftentimes they'd also do the city band. Also, when we had the 25th Infantry out at the fort, during its heyday, when we were fighting Indians, there was a band there. So there was we played together. There was some band community happening. During Prohibition, during the stock market slam, those are tough times just to be able to eat. So the band would wither, and on good times, things would come up like the Dawes Act when we opened up the reservation because there was excess Indian lands. It was all just a scam to get their land, but there were lots of people in town. The band played every night for 2 weeks on different corners downtown because they had an audience, and they must have put an instrument case out on the corner to get funds. And it was just a heyday because town was full of folks hoping to be able to get some land up on the Flathead.
Wow.
Times like that, the bands flourished. Of course, that the band took a dive at World War II and almost smiffled out, and that's when Alex Stephensoff was a student at the university. He'd come over to go to school, been recruited from Russia. Way out in Siberian Russia. and
Not even the Russians want to go to Siberia.
Oh gosh, they gave him to us, and we got. Without him, the city band there would have been a long hiatus, I'm sure. And he was an interesting fella, and without him, Lord knows if somebody at the university would have finally picked it up, or a school teacher in town. Don't know.
Well, I can't imagine somebody from Russia in a post-World War II era in Missoula, where you have Joseph McCarthy, you have all those Red Scare, Hollywood 8, all that kind of communist talk. How long was he doing it?
Like 50 years. So he did it from World War II till I took it over.
Wow.
I think I did it I think I took it over in the early 90s. So he was dang near 50 years doing it. And he owned a business here in town, so that business helped keep the band alive. Bodtown Bakery, where Rocker Rudy's is at. That was his bakery. And it was his in-laws' bakery. So he met a local girl.
That's how you do it.
Met a local girl with some money, and they gave him a pretend job to run the bakery when in fact he was doing the Missoula City Band. The first time I ever saw the guy, he was a penny pincher. And there was a party downtown. It was a Christmas party at the old music shop when it was it's down on Higgins, and I'm trying to remember what the business really was, but the music center had moved into there, and it was a Christmas party, and it was cold and windy, and this little old man ran in and spoke in a horrible accent that I could understand, and pointed at something. There was a bag, and it was some music. I didn't know that, and he took it and ran out. And I asked the fellow behind the counter, the employee, says, "Oh, that's Alex Stephensoff. You never met him before?" Says, "No, what was all that about?" He says, "He refuses to pay for parking, so he double parks, and I have to have everything ready for him." That's the first time I'd ever seen or heard of this legend, Stephensoff. And he was a very interesting fellow, but he wasn't a trained musician. He liked to play horn, which is an impossible instrument to play anyway. I don't know what kind of musician he was, but he had no formal training in conducting, that's for sure. And but he persevered, and he was somehow able to make it work. There was no other show in town. It was him, and there were some good players in his band, and he was affiliated with, he was an Elks member, and so that's where they rehearsed, was upstairs in the Elks.
I always like to think about all the other bands that kind of branch from there, like the inspiration. Like, you never know, because it's been such a staple and like a long tradition of Missoula for so long. What are some of the bands and other inspirations that branched off of the Missoula City Band?
Peel off, for years, old George Goodrich and Company had the Town and Gown Musical Appreciation Society. And town and gown means that they're locals, regular citizens in gown, people that taught at the university, either in music or oftentimes not. And for years they played Dixieland music. I played with them for a bunch of years as well. And then we have ensembles that break off. Right now, there's a trumpet quintet that does their own thing. There's a brass quintet that they're all members of the city band. A clarinet quartet. I think it used to be a quintet, but we lost one of the cats. There's a trombone group that most of us play in the community band or the city band. And I'm trying to think, there's a local flute ensemble. I don't know if they're currently active or not. And then all kinds of side projects that will come in and sing or play as part of our program, just to give folks an opportunity for an audience that I can't offer them money, but I can offer them a venue and a time slot. And if we can play together, that's even better. Like we share the stage with the Sweet Adelines choir.
And also speaking of the art of collaboration, what are some of the things the city band has worked with in, you've worked with a Bitterroot band, you made one mega band, that's from more recent history, but like way back when, were there like touring groups that would ever want to like jump on and use the city band?
Traveling musicians were oftentimes grabbed and brought in and played. All of the fraternal organizations in town all shared the same musicians. So the Elks band was the Eagles band, was the city band, was that, and all they did was just change jackets.
Really, yeah.
And they had their own jacket. That's one of the reasons for the uniform, so they could, oh, that's the Eagles band. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think.
Just thinking off the top of your head, you got the Eagles Lodge, Moose Lodge, Lions. Yeah, the Lions one just out of Bonner. I heard that they kind of ended just recently too.
Oh, shoot, man. And those are fraternal organizations that wanted to have their own little community, and that was part of it. Some of them were drum and bugle corps, which then were even more difficult because it was just their members, and so they tried to teach their members how to play a 2-valve bugle or whack at a drum. So the quality of music wasn't paramount. And then they bring in ringers from the city band, people that knew how to play, and they put their jackets on. There was one. It's a great picture of. We could place it in here sometime. The city band is standing outside of a bar in Hamilton, and they were playing to be like a German band. So they were in costume, and it was probably, between wars, there was this love-hate relationship with German cultural aspects. They kept starting wars, but we loved their music and their beer, and all the members are dressed up to look German, and they're outside this Hamilton band, outside this Hamilton bar. It was a minstrel show. As we were coming, before radio and TV, that was just shows, minstrelly. And oftentimes it was lampooning different cultures, including the Germans, including black folks. And it was part of our culture at that time. We're not too crazy about it now.
Well, especially during that era, because if you go way back when, with the Western expansion, everything like that, a lot of immigrants took that opportunity, like when they get to New York, Ellis Island, all that kind of stuff, people were pretty much like, ugh, get out of here, all that kind of stuff. And so that was the journey west. That was their way of getting homesteading properties out west and be like, okay, if I can't make it here, I'll make it out west.
That's right, and they would form their own little communities, much more so in Butte than here, but the Finntown and all these little, we even
Frenchtown.
We had bands that would pretend to be Native American. And the organization still exists, Band of the Red Man. And they'd all pretend to dress up like Native Americans. And they make another society out of it. The Masons, the Masonic Order, all those folks, that was a big deal of small communities trying to interact with each other and find meaning in something, and some of that meaning was.
I mean, yeah, like I can understand, because even especially way back when is like, kids would play cowboys and Indians, then it eventually became cops and robbers, and little iterations of that and everything. And
I remember playing German and not German, after the World War II.
Yeah.
So we and we were just mimicking what was going on.
Exactly.
Around us.
Kids don't know any better most of the time. They just want to have fun. And that's the thing about like being the city band, is like kind of have that like that feeling of being a part of something.
Yeah.
And even if it's like part of a union club or Elks Lodge or anything like that, just being able to have that kind of community connection. Like I always like to think about Dick Johnson, who is one of the oldest members, who lived to be 100 years old.
Yeah.
Of course, he couldn't play at the tail end, the very, very tip of the
Very
tail.
tail. That's right. He was still good till about 98 in playing, but then he couldn't hear and he couldn't see. Dick just passed 2 years ago, or this past year. Yeah. And it just meant the world to him. He was a dentist by trade. And there's some people that just get hooked on music and then go and do something else to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And be an amateur musician. And we have plenty of those folks in the band as well. There's a few folks that are professional or have been teachers or are teachers, but for the most part, it's people that played in high school. Maybe they played a year or two in college, not necessarily, and then got themselves a career and a job finally. And then the crazy people got married, and then it takes them another 20 years to get through it. Folks like you don't have a family to have to go home to.
That's true.
Have to go home. And people with a moment in their day to be able to do something else. And it's very distractful, and it's also quite enlightening. I mean, it can be a distraction, but people stay around because it brings meaning to their life.
Yeah.
And then to be applauded for it on Wednesday night, it's enough of a hook for folks to go, well, look there's so little I can do in this world right now to make a difference, to do something good for my community, and that's another aspect of why community groups are so important. Good. Many folks do a job and then need something to be able to fulfill an inside passion to do something for our community.
Exactly.
So some people go out and coach Little League ball, or they get involved in church work, or whatever the deal happens to be. Many of our folks, this is what they can give to themselves and to their neighbors.
Yeah. So in your opinion, what are some of the common threads of people join the city band? What is one of the main reasons, like that you always hear?
We hear about it from new people that move in. The first thing I ask them is, say, hey, we're here to, do you have a band we could play in? And usually I joke and says, what, do you have a job? Did you move to Missoula and you have a job already? And for the most part, they go, yeah, which is like, oh, I thought just people just moved here. And they want to be part of the community that they've seen. Usually before they join, they come to a city band concert on Wednesday. And they see what's going on, and they're amazed by it because it's not normal. It's not necessarily abnormal, but it's not usually what happens. Cities grow too big, and we lose that community. Missoula's still a small town wrapped in too many newcomers, but that we can keep community by keeping pockets of smaller communities. And they come to the park, and it's free. Now, we do try to milk them for a few bucks while they're there, you know. But we're not twisting any arms.
Yeah, suggested donations. You have what you call the band aids, which is a big part of it. And let's talk a little bit about like when did we start doing the band aids?
Yeah, about going out and begging. Begging.
Friends are out to pick your pocket, so smile and dig deep. Bless you. The city still gives hey, look at you. Corey brought along muscle with her. Thank you, Janelle. Make sure and get some money from this old geezer here. That's her daddy. Hey, the city paid.
The Band-Aids will send them out and beg for money, and I'll do a little shtick to offer to all the proceeds from the book go to the Missoula City Band, and then we've got corporate sponsors every year that. Blackfoot Communications has forever donated to us. I had both of the owners' kids in both the Sentinel Band and also the Missoula City Band. Denny Washington for years he partially underwrote the cost of the book as well. There was Horizon Credit Union joined our ranks this year, and I don't like begging for money. It's certainly not a strength of mine, I just hate walking out to somebody with my hand out. So we get this donate. When we moved to the park, the first rehearsal I had at Bonner Park, COVID time, somebody came over and got my attention in between tunes we were rehearsing, and she was so overwhelmed, and I knew her but not real well, and it was all very sweet, and she was so thankful to hear music going on. And she disappeared before the end of rehearsal. She came over and handed me a check for $1,000.
Wow.
It was like she was just so overwhelmed that maybe life is going to come back. And it's coming back to her neighborhood. It was so sweet. Things like that all of a sudden will have that opportunity for folks to aid in us being able to provide music. Yeah. And I do these the concerts with the Bitterroot Band. We've done it with Helena. We played a gig in Glacier National Park until they changed vendors, and all of a sudden the band has been closed. So there's a Flathead community band, and we used to do exchanges, and we got inside the park and played underneath the shadow of Mount Brown with their band. Oh my gosh. But it costs a lot of money just for transportation anymore, besides liability insurance, to be able to make those work. Do more and more things here in town, and then bring in friends. Anytime I have a friend that visits, I put the pinch on them, and they guest with the band. And then we have all kinds of great musicians in Missoula, and they're generous enough to share their music with us. Jocelyn Thompson, who's got a music degree, but she cuts hair for a living, and she sings.
Sometimes I'd like to quit. Nothing ever seems to fit. Hanging around, nothing to do but frown. Rainy days and Mondays always get me down.
Caitlin Sisler and Jesse Docknall, who is the band director at Hellgate, they solo with us every single year. That's Mike Hansen on accordion. There's just all kinds of musicians that bypass a fee and share their talents with our audience, which is big, that we've been able to continue to enlarge the audience with what we have to offer. Some people just come out to the park. Most of us don't have air conditioning. Do you have air conditioning? You probably do, don't you? Neil, do you have air conditioning in your house?
Yeah.
Who asked you? Most of us don't. Most of us don't have air conditioning. Wait, many of us don't have air. Anyway, that folks get out of their house on a hot summer night, and oftentimes with families and or friends, and bring their lounge chair, their blankets to the kids. Usually Big Dipper is there selling ice cream. All kinds of folks stop on their way in or out over at Dairy Queen, and we just did a special. We did a special song for that old fella that passed us this year. That was the highlight of the year. Is I scream, you all scream for ice cream. We're able to personalize what we have done in the past and what's happening now in Missoula. Choral Festival, we always bank up with them and share that music. I'm working on a centennial concert for next year again. I found program from 1926, man, and I'm waiting for a couple tunes to come in from a hidden source of mine. It's so much fun to recall how things used to be in Missoula, and they're just much closer to what we still experience.
Yeah.
You know, our town hadn't changed that much, and that's one of the sweet things about it.
And yeah, you always like to let the music speak for itself in a lot of these concerts.
Yeah.
And you know, in a lot of ways, how do you know what songs and music speaks to you that you want to just perform? Because you know, legacy is a big part of it with the 100-year programs that you've been doing.
That's the most difficult aspect of being a band director, is making judgment calls about, I love this piece, and does it fit with, if we're going to do a theme this time around, you know, and how well does it fit, and will the band like it enough to be able to buy into it? Because if the band doesn't buy into it, the performance will not be genuine. You know, people just have at it haphazardly. And will the audience buy into it and accept it?
But most of this music was written by Felix Vinatera, a Yankton, South Dakota band director that got caught up with Custer at the end, but not the very end. Here is our own Hellgate overture. This is called The Gates of Satan. There's nothing satanic about it. It just happens to be, you know, Devil's Tower over in Dakota and all. It's a natural area over in Dakota. And at the very end of the piece, that you'll be wondering, when will that ever be? You'll hear these large intervals. And in my mind, those are the gates of Satan right there. Get ready, hold on to your socks, and relax. Here's the gates of Satan.
I like to enjoy myself, and in between I try to entertain without being too crude, because there's some great stories that go along with this music. And sometimes I can't share the whole story because it's no longer politically correct, or I have to misidentify, or just not say the given name of the tune because it's so god awful. But the music is fun.
Yeah.
All right, and it doesn't carry the baggage if you don't know that the words were written 150 years ago and they're unacceptable now.
Yeah.
So I have to hide that a little bit. It's a fun challenge, and I still, you know, I wasn't done 2 weeks with this year's season, and I try to just let it be and let it drift off. And next thing you know, I'm going, oh man, I'll hear a tune, or somebody will bring up something, and next thing you know, I'm down another rabbit hole. But it's a pleasant rabbit hole.
You know, there's always those flashpoint moments in history that really influence culture of that time.
Yeah, and still, 250 years ago and 150 years ago. Yeah, I'm planning for a gig on the shores of the Yellowstone Powder River, which is right outside of Terry, Montana, written for one of Terry. Terry was the commander of Custer. I never knew that, and I'd never gotten off the freeway to go to Terry, but I'm putting together a band to play out there because that's the last place that Custer's band played for Custer. Custer always marched with a mounted band. Yep, mounted band. Drummers, tuba players, playing on horseback. And that's the last place they played for him because there weren't enough horses for the band to go to march across country to the Bighorn. So the band stayed at the supply depot at Terry and played Gary Owen, and Custer marched off, and the band lived. It's a success story for bands.
It's like one of those moments where just like you just never know what could have happened.
Yeah.
Like Custer's last band.
Yep, I've used that. I'm giving a.
Oh yeah, that sounds a perfect.
It's wonderful.
Iteration.
It's perfect. So I've done some. I'm doing another one in October for band teachers, and hopefully I'm trying to get a part of the big commemoration, not just commemoration, reenactment. There's all kinds of folks that get in a reenactment. Not much happens here in Missoula. I'm not crazy about reenactment. It just doesn't fit me very well. I don't act worth a dang. It is what you see, you know. But there's a reenactment in Bismarck because that's where the 7th Cavalry left from, and then marched across country until they got to Terry. They are doing a reenactment, and I'm trying to put together a band to go over there and do that shtick. Yeah, I'm not a fan of Custer, but Custer's last band. And the only reason the band lived was because Custer colored the horses. It's a tactic you probably learned at West Point, where you assign different aspects of your troops to the same color horses. Bays would be this one, sorrels would be this one, grays, well, the band was always mounted on gray horses. And after Custer colored the horses, there weren't enough horses. Plus they have to take as many horses unmounted as mounted because horses get shot out from underneath cavalry. So that's part of the requirement. And that's why there weren't enough horses for the band, thank God.
It's kind of interesting to kind of think about those kind of things where like everything had to be uniform, had to have a certain look, a little zesty to a certain degree.
Out in the middle of the stinking desert. Oh my gosh. It was just fortunate. Most bands don't have a successful story. That's not right. But the fact that there's hundreds of people that died, and these cats didn't die, and the reason being, yeah, baby, when I first read that, I had to do a lot more research to find out.
Well, you had to confirm it, because it's like, it sounds so outlandish.
Yes, and they all lived. And so I followed the conductor, and I'm researching about each one of the band members, and
their family trees, if anyone's...
Yeah, and how long they stayed in the service, and it's a lot of fun.
And you know, speaking of legacy, you know, you were telling me a little bit about some history facts about some local Missoulians here in town who have family members who have done city band in the history. Do you have anyone?
Yeah, it's you know, the Stoll family. When I was researching the book, there's a picture that Neil pulled up at the courthouse steps. It was a great backdrop for pictures. And everyone and their dog would take their organizations down there. All the fraternal organizations would take their groups, put them on the steps at the courthouse, take their picture. It was like official. And there's a family there, the Stoll family, and a colleague of mine, Nancy Labby. She's had heard stories about that there are people in her family that were in that. Played in the city band for years, and she sent me to an aunt who lived way out Miller Creek, and we met, and she gave me, they'd written a little pamphlet of their family history, got reading on that, got confirmed with him, and that picture on the courthouse steps, dad and 2 sons. You know, there can't be, I don't know, 25 people in the band, and 3 of them are from the same family.
Wow.
Which is just so cool, and it meant the world to that family. Stoll family, Stoll, good German family that, you know, horn blowing was part of what you did. You know, we've got all kinds of. I impersonated Nils Peterson one time. One of our tuba players. Let's see. Nils Peterson was the tuba player of renown, and then he passed on the legacy to George Washington, who was a longtime Missoula tuba player. He moved to Spokane. He's in care now that he's failing, and but for 40 years he played in the city band. There's a picture of Dayshaw. Many of us know the Dayshaw family. Old Dusty Dayshaw, I think he's retired now from the bench, but he was a local, colorful a judge here in town. And when I first called him, I had to get through the rigmaroles, county government. I want to talk to the judge. Well, you just don't call
the judge out of the blue.
I didn't know that. So I finally got piped through to him, and he knew my name just from the band stuff. And I said, "Excuse me, Judge, but I'm thinking maybe you've got a tuba player in your closet." And he just went nuts, and he went up to the, amidst his law books, he took out the family history, and sure enough, and there's a picture. I wonder if it's part of those pictures we can find. The band is marching in the parade, the city band, and there can't be 25. And his kin is a tuba player in the back. I don't know if he was front or back. I think he was in the front. Anyway, the band turned one way, and he turned the other way, and the whole band is going right. And I guess he didn't have great sight. And he turned left, and it was caught on film. And it's a wonderful occurrence that happens in bands. We all wish we had that kind of story to tell. How embarrassing that must have been! Oh my gosh, the Dayshaw family, Petersons, the Lawrensons, all these old farts. Most of them gone now, I'm afraid, but we still have generations playing in the city band. The whole Goodrich clan. So George Goodrich also had 3 sons, and 2 of them played trumpet. They came through the band, and whenever they come back to visit, they always play in the band and ask to play tunes that they remember playing with old Alex Stepanzoff. And every year I have half a dozen people that played in the band that have moved away and come back, and they always come back and want to be a part of if they're still playing to play in the band. Heck yeah.
Yeah, even to this last year, one person traveled 250 miles just to play in the city band.
Yes. And that happens all the time. We had, back when we played 4th of July at the mall, wouldn't it be nice if the new owners of the mall would reinstitute that? The guy came up to us. We were up on truck beds out in the parking lot at the mall, and this old fella, I was a bit younger, it was probably 20 years ago more, and he held up a clarinet case and said, with a British accent that I don't do. Do you do a British accent? Can I play with your band? Okay. Well, sure. Sure. What the
British
heck,
are coming?
Come on up here. And once I finally had a chance, in between tunes, I would chat with this fella, and I said, "You've got an accent. Are you a tourist?" He said, "Yes, I'm in from Britain, and I play in a town band there." And then the rest of the concert was I'd stop and get on the microphone and say, "Hey, you realize that we're celebrating a holiday. We whipped your butt out of our country. It's so nice that we kissed and made up. It was so much fun." Stuff like that happens all the time.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many stories within the city band that are just kind of like string of consciousness. You just don't know what's going to pop in and everything like that. And, a big rich part of history is that Alfredo, I was there kind of in the beginning as he was kind of just going from standing to being in assisted care more and more. So he lived a long time.
Oh, he sure did.
But he was one of the Italian internments at the Fort Missoula during World War II. Yep. So there's definitely some rich history there, and a lot of the Italians were very ingrained in Missoula community at that time too.
Because he had come over on a commercial ship, and so he wasn't any part of the Italian, Mussolini. No, not Mussolini. Wait, yes, it was Mussolini. It was the Italian one. He wasn't part of the military or anything like that. He was just a waiter. It was a job, and then he went down after Mussolini joined the war. He went to Tampa with a friend because they could, the big hotels down there, they could be waiters. Well, they found out he was Italian, and they shipped him all the way out here to Missoula. Lucky for us that he fell in love with a grocer's daughter.
He was 95 years young this year, and he's going to sing "O Solo Mio."
I want to say one thing. The sole mio in Italia, sole is a son, mio is mine. But it's not only mine, it's for everybody. You understand? Yeah, it's not for everybody. You can sing too if you want. Oh, sole mio. It's supposed to sit down? No. Che bella cosa la giornata sola all'aria fredda dopo la tempesta.
So after the war was over, he stuck around, married a gal, and ran the Broadway market forever, but he was just a singer. That's all the guy really was, and he was just so much fun. I'd take my boys in there, and he'd always give them a total run. We used to dip out olives from wooden casks, and then they built that Verizon store on top of it. Well, it was just so much fun. At the end of his life, he was losing his tessitura, so he couldn't sing as high. So we got an arranger in the band, Mike Rose-Barsky, and we'd have rehearsal, and we'd sing his favorite song was "Oh Solo Mio." Now we did other ones, but that was his signature song. Well, at the last 3 times he sang with the band, we had to, after rehearsal, we met and we figured out we need to take the song down another half step. So Alfredo would have more success in singing it. And so Mike would go to work between Monday and Wednesday, and we'd print out a new one, and we wouldn't tell Alfredo, and we'd pass out the new parts, and it was, we couldn't have done anything sweeter. And Mike to spend all that time and make new arrangements for him. Oh my gosh, he was so much fun. And then after the concert, he had like a little Italian garden in his backyard. Little Christmas lights and overgrown. He'd take some good Italian wine and cheese and crackers, and we'd sit and he'd tell stories. He was an old band guy. He played in a bicycle band in Italy when he was a child. Kind of like our mounted bands in America. Now they had bicycle bands in Italy. Oh my gosh.
Oh man, imagine having to balance and play.
Oh, jeez. Yep, hard to imagine. And his kin still live around here. He's got a daughter, lives in Frenchtown. Oh, what a family.
It's not my soul, but it's for everybody around here. And people, own soul. All right.
Yeah, I mean, Missoula's always known for their characters. The people who would stand out, do the kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, in more recent city band stuff, one of the big staples was the tiny dancer. The couple, the old couple that would pop in and do dancing at, Wednesday out to lunch in Missoula at Karis Park, and then they would hop on over to the
And
City
in
Band
between,
concert.
you know what they went to? All right. So they'd come out to lunch, and they went by a number of names. I called them Tiny Dancer from the Elton John song, Hold Me Closer. I don't know why, but some people called him Waldo during that whole book thing. The Bitterers called him Solid Gold, the Solid Gold Dancers from an old TV show. Anyway, it was this couple, and they were everywhere. And finally, they were distracting. He called it his metaphysical exercise. That's what Ron called it. He was a graduate from the first class at Sentinel High School. When they separated, and Hellgate and Sentinel, they built Sentinel. He was from that first graduating class. And there was all kinds of stories. I tried forever and ever to interview him and or his wife to find out what the real story was. But they were certainly special people. And the university finally had to ask him to leave inside concerts because it was so distracting. Inside, you can't get away from Ron doing his doodah. My mother was convinced it was absolutely religiously, he was divinely inspired. I don't know if it was that. He was drunk much of the time. Not drunk, but he enjoyed.
It was intoxicating, the music. Let's just say he was drunk off the music.
And he had a little bag with him. He would go out to lunch, and I watched bikers chase him around the venue, and then in between he'd go to the mall because air conditioning. He always had a boombox with him, so he continued to keep warmed up and just absolutely fit. Funny, he died of a heart attack, and then come to the City Band concert at night, and I finally met Ron, and we had a discussion because he wasn't aware of the fact or he didn't care that he was distracting, and he stood right in front of my younger son who was in the audience, and me, and my younger son said something to Ron, and there thousands of people probably said things to Ron, and he took offense to my younger son and cursed at him. So the concert's over, I go back, and here's I don't know, he was 8, 9 years old, he's crying. He told me what happened. Well, I went and had a discussion with Ron, and Klapke was his last name, and explained to him how, if he was going to continue to come to our concerts, how we're going to get around this, because my son was not the first person to complain about it. And so I told Ron where to be at 10 and 2. Be by a tree, or be aware of your surroundings, and don't dance in front of people standing up. And he got that, and he appreciated that. And we had conversations every week. He was an educated man, very articulate, and I saw him on his deathbed.
Wow.
An interesting cat.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to see a lot of the people who may or may not actually be in the City Band, but who experience the City Band on their own right.
Yeah.
And
if it ever turns into be a job, I'm just going to quit. It's not a job. I call it my pretend job. What it does is just keep. Only 2 days a week do I go to the clubs, after rehearsal and after the concert.
Yeah, you probably put in maybe 5-6 hours a week.
Well, yeah, in rehearsal, there's 2 hours, but there's a half hour up front, and then I have to go out and make sure that we debrief after the rehearsal to find out what's good and bad, and so that's a trip to a club. And then Wednesday, getting there an hour early, getting everything set up, and then after the concert, enjoying each other's company, telling lies to each other on a deck somewhere. It's a wonderful thing. And then oh Lord, if I charge per hour with the amount of time I put on the City Band, no one could afford it. But it brings me meaning and satisfaction.
Yeah. What do you think? What kind of meaning do you think it brings to the community?
It's just joining in together experiencing live music. I mean, just to experience live music, we've seen what people will do to join in together outside on a Missoula summer evening. I mean, that venue is packed all the time. We have such a short summer season that we all just love it. And when it's here, we all want to be outside. Mm-hmm. Some way or other, and I'm wise enough now, I stopped floating the river because I'm just going to fall over and die, break my neck. But I can still do the city band, and it's outside, and we join together in our small groups, and then the small groups become this, we typically have 500-600 people at the concert, and it's just so much fun to share music and history and company with each other. In a different way. It's playing outside at the band shell is totally different than playing inside a concert hall. Not one is better than the other. It's just totally different, and it's a joy. You don't have to worry so much about the kids making noise because we got a PA, And if you don't like it, just move closer. Mm-hmm. Just pick up your lounge chair and move closer. Or if the kids want to, then go over there and splash around. And it's a wonderful venue. Parking, I know, can be difficult just because we don't have a parking lot. But thank God we don't have a parking lot. We've got a park right there. And so people get their exercise. Many people stop and drop off an older folk with their chair and then go find somewhere to park. And then spend a cooling summer evening together.
I guess this is more a hypothetical question, but how would you imagine somebody that you plucked from the past city band and plopped them here in the future? What would their reaction be to the legacy?
Oh my gosh. So they wouldn't know that so much has changed, that there's so much entertainment now available without leaving your park lounger. And it's still hard for some of us to get off especially when the weather's foul, to get off that park lounger and go do a social event. Because they wouldn't know that's so hard, especially the older you get. Just you get dinner, and then it's like, God, geez, do I really want to go back out? I have to shovel just to get that's a problem for audiences, especially with aging. But I think that our mission is the same, that it gives people that play a chance to be able to do that within the group. Because I'll guarantee you, there's only, of the whole band, so on a typical night, there'll be 70 people in the band, that there's only 3, 4, there's less than 10 people you want to hear play a solo. Right? That they're good enough musicians to be in the band. But the magic of a band, of an ensemble, is that indeed we are better collectively than we are separately.
And speaking of working, like some of the magic behind even the rehearsal, since we're on the band shell and playing, and when everything vibes just perfectly and we end the song on such a high note, and then just because we don't have an audience, we can actually hear the resonance of the audio.
We hear it banging off the dugouts across the field. It's like, wow, ha!
Yeah.
It is. It's shocking to the band, and the band needs to know that and experience that because as
soon as the song's over, it's like everyone's clapping right away, and you don't get a chance to really just sit in the music. To bathe in it, yes.
Yeah, and it's beautiful to us band people, the love for the sound of a band.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful sound. It's comforting. We know what it is. And then the more we pay attention to making that sound, the more satisfaction we get as individuals.
And I think the perfect question for this to wrap up the interview would essentially mean, what do you see the city band in 100 years?
Oh, jeez. It's Missoula will keep growing. The band shell will last. I don't know if it'll last 100 years. But I think the shell will still be there. And it's in the university area. The university's not going anywhere. And band shell, I probably rightfully decided to put the band shell in the university district. There's some continuity there, and there's structure, and there's legacy. And I think that's a good thing. That there'll still be live music. There'll be less and less and less live music, I'm afraid, just because of technology. But there's magic in live music, in live everything, live theater, live comedians. There is magic in the moment, and those of us that live in that space understand how sacred it is, and that we continue to do it because of that sacredness. That stuff can just happen. Stuff will happen, and you have no idea what will happen when. Something will happen. Boy, there was one this year I can't call up right now, but there was there was a golden moment. Boy, yeah, there are golden moments that just appear, and then you stop and appreciate that spontaneity that just happened one time and won't ever happen again, but it happened there. And then we call attention to it for those folks that missed it, and then appreciate the fact of being alive and being together and being here in this beautiful outdoor venue in Montana and experiencing life in real freaking time. I can't imagine that the arts especially would give up live performances, because it's so much better than anything canned, I believe. Hey, you didn't even have time to prep, you know. Joel dropped the ball in your lap. Pretty good interview there, boy. Well, I don't know. You kept me trying to figure out how to answer. Thanks,
well, yeah,
buddy.
I'm always good about trying to find the right questions based on the string of consciousness and trying to bring it back around. But there's overall has been a great retrospect of Gary Gillet and this Missoula City Band. I really want to thank you for joining me, and I think we'll have some really good pictures and slides that we're going to be showing throughout this time, and definitely could use your help with that as well.
I'll do that, man. Hey, and we'll be back next summer, like mid-June to mid-August is when our season is, and it's every summer Wednesday at 7:30 at Bonner Park.
Awesome.
Thanks, bud.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.